Thank you for joining us for part 2. Let us begin with some theoretical arguments. A worker who has worked hard all her life saves up capital to start a business. She then becomes the boss as it is her capital. She takes all the risk if the business goes bust, legally and financially. Why should workers who don't contribute to investment and share the risk equally be part of the decision-making process in her business?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's two answers to that question. The full answer is it shouldn't be her business, and it's not going to be if we make this change. So she's not going to exist as a capitalist anymore. And if you say to me, well, that means she's going to lose something, my answer is yes, she is, right? People who own the means of production, I mean, Bezos is going to lose something. He's going to lose a gazillion dollars worth of capital that he owns. What are we going to gain? Does anything offset that imposition on those owners? Yes, we're going to gain classlessness. We're going to gain self-management. We're going to gain an allocation system that can take into account the ecology instead of exploiting the ecology for profit, and on and on and on. And so that's the first answer. But now let's take it back a step to, okay, we don't have the whole new economy, because that's the way you asked it. We have now. And let's say there's 20 of us who work in a firm and you're the owner for the sake of this discussion. And you've done a certain amount of work, et cetera, et cetera. You didn't just inherit it, say, or you didn't just, behave in a grotesque manner and steal it, say. Let's say you worked hard and you did a whole lot to be in the position that you're in. Well, nonetheless, the position that you're in is exalted in a way, unless it's a really small business, it's exalted in the sense that you're getting profits, you're getting much more income than other people, you have much more say than other people, you have much more control over your life than other people. And once again, even in the current system, if our workplace organization, let's say it's a union or let's say it's a workers' council or whatever it is, right, can challenge you and can put a demand on you that A, we get more higher wages, A, we have more control over our workday, B, we have, in other words, a sequence of steps which lead toward the ultimate goal. And along the way, you're going to lose each time. Too bad, right? And for some people, it is too bad. I mean, there can be people who are deserving, they're caring, et cetera, et cetera. But they are the exception. And the reason they're the exception is because I used to say garbage rises to try and explain this. In current society, the way you get ahead, unless you are endowed with some incredible talent that gives you bargaining power, and you don't have to sort of be nasty on their way up. Nice guys finish last is the slogan. And inside corporations and businesses, the way that people get to the top is, generally speaking, by being at best a bit paternalistic and mostly blind to the damage they leave behind, and at worst, completely not caring at all and even getting a kick out of the damage that they leave behind. Everybody knows this at some level, I think. So there's a movie, I don't know whether in Germany, I guess it is. Netflix probably exists in Germany. On Netflix, there's a movie, not a movie, one of those streaming things called Dopesick. It's worth watching for anybody who doubts this. It's about the pharmaceutical company and the OxyContin crisis in the United States. And it's about, it does a remarkable job of showing how these institutions pressure people to behave in certain ways. And if they don't behave that way, they just don't advance. And so the people who do advance did behave that way. And I don't feel sorry for them.
In a business, one worker will always be faster than the other for the same task. If, example, 10 translators are assigned a project, one will be more efficient than the others. How should business deal with this discrepancy? Would it not be unfair to pay one less than the other?
Okay. The remunerative norm, that's a big technical economic word. Anyway, the thing that determines your income, in the system that I envision. It's how long you work, how hard you work, and the onerousness of the conditions under which you work, as long as your work is socially valued. That last phrase matters a lot. So I can't go in my backyard, dig holes, have my kids shoot a hose at me, and say, look, I'm working long, I'm working hard, and I'm working under terrible conditions. Give me high pay. Because all I'm doing is digging a hole and filling it. And nobody wants that. Similarly, I can't say I want to be, I want to play at Wimbledon uh, because nobody wants to watch me play at Wimbledon. So it's not socially valued. Now, let's say I work in a firm, your example. I work in a firm, and maybe you're physically stronger than me. Maybe you have better reflexes than me. Maybe you have some mental capacity that I don't, whatever it is. And we happen to be working at a similar task, and you happen to be generating more. And the question is, should you get more? Well, that would be remunerating for output. And a lot of socialists answer that yes, right? A lot of socialists say yes, that's the correct thing to do. Well, if that's the correct thing to do, then basketball is pretty much a universal game now. So German audience probably knows who LeBron James is. LeBron James is, 35 or 40 million dollars a year. He's underpaid. He's not overpaid. Now, no socialist wants to hear that. But if the norm is pay for the value of your output, right? Then he's underpaid. Where does it go? Well, Nike takes some of it. The owners of the Los Angeles Lakers take some of it. The TV networks take some of it. The value of his product is enormous because so many people want to watch him play. So in that example, we get the feeling something's wrong here. And the thing that's wrong by rewarding them that much is we're saying, look, the person is born and they're lucky in the genetic lottery. Their reflexes, eyesight, strength, Chomsky's intelligence, whatever you want. They're lucky in the genetic lottery. Do we, on top of their being lucky in the genetic lottery, shower them with wealth? Right? And my answer is no. It's not warranted. Right? And now Thatcher will come along and say, yeah, but if you don't do that, they won't put out, they won't produce, and then society will lose a lot. And the form that this usually takes, and that I run into all the time, is, yeah, Michael, once again, it sounds groovy that people should get income just for how long, how hard, and how onerous, as long as people want the result. But who's going to be a doctor? Right? Doctors have to go to school for a long time. And nobody will be a doctor if you pay the doctor the same way you pay somebody else. And this is even without looking at the balanced jobs, because doctors don't only do doctoring anymore in this economy. But take it the way they raise the question. And normally what I'll do with an audience is I'll ask for somebody who's in pre-med to raise their hand, and they will. And I'll get somebody else and I'll say, okay, so you're just getting out of high school and you now have a choice. And the choice is, do you go to McDonald's and become a short order cook for life? Do you go work in a coal mine for life? Whatever, some form of labor which is disempowering. Or do you go to college for 4 years while the other person's in the coal mine? Horrible. Then go to graduate school, medical school for another however many years while the person's in. Then become what I don't know what they call it in Germany, but a fledgling doctor who gets pushed around a lot. It's like being in the army and being a recruit, or being in a fraternity or something. And then you become a full doctor. And so I say, you're telling me that you're not going to do that path. You're going to jump over there into the coal mine unless I pay you a ton. And I'm telling you, you're lying. And they get all indignant. And I say, well, let's test it. I'm going to start lowering the salary. And now realize what we're saying here. You're going to make a lifetime decision. Doctor, coal mine, or whatever two you want. Engineer, short order cook, not a chef, short order cook, or et cetera, et cetera. And I say, okay, so let's start at 500,000. I say, will you switch? No. 400? No. 300, no. 200, no. 100, no. And they ask me, how low can I live on? Because I'm not going over there into that coal mine instead of being a doctor unless I'm going to starve um, being a doctor at the low wage. And it just reveals what's true and what all of economics training and schooling and all the messages around us obscure, which is you need an incentive to do something that is painful. You need an incentive to do something that is onerous. You need an incentive to do something for a long time. But you don't need an incentive to do something that's empowering per se. And so it's not true. It's just in the current system, which rewards bargaining power, you get what you can take. Doctors can take a lot. Why can they take a lot? Well, because they keep down the number of doctors, right? Because they make medical schools very hard and they control access to them. This is literally what goes on. And so they raise their bargaining power and they can make a lot. But no, we're not going to lose that way. And so I answered two things. One, is it fair? And I'm answering, that's a values question, and it depends on your values. My values say you don't get, if you go out into the field to pick cotton or to pick corn or something, and you're physically stronger, and so you can pick more, you don't get more income. If you have better tools and you can pick more, you don't get more income. You get income for how long, how hard, and how onerous, but you have to be doing something that's socially valuable. So is it morally bad that the person who you gave the example of, gets the same or gets more than the person who is producing more? No. And is it economically bad? Again, no. The incentives are correct. The incentives incentivize that which you have to incentivize, which is working hard and working long and enduring bad conditions. I mean, these arguments are exactly the arguments you're raising are critical, and they are all discussed in more detail and with more examples in the book, but I'm trying to do as best I can.
What do you make of the argument that management and decision-making of an organization requires expertise that workers do not possess? For example, financial planning and strategies, marketing, management, etc. Why should a business integrate workers that may not have the know-how to contribute in the decision-making process?
Why should the medical profession integrate women who may not have the know-how 50 years ago? Well, you shouldn't like that. You shouldn't overnight, right? You don't take a woman off the street and make her a brain surgeon with no training and no background and no understanding, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. No, that's insane, of course. But you do. Why? Because you want to get rid of that class division. You want to get rid of that class struggle. You want to get rid of that gigantic inequality. You want to get rid of people not having control over their lives. So you do change education and change the allocation of resources to schools and all sorts of things like that. And also change the division of labor in the workplace, maybe a little step at a time. But remember those Argentine factories where people who, about whom what you just said that person would describe as being the case for workers, it was true for all those workers. And it was also true that they made the factory work where the owner and the managers and so on had been failing. And there are various reasons for that, but one of them is that people can do. It isn't. I mean, the false argument is if I say everybody can do everything. That's false. If I say everybody can be a surgeon, that's false. If I say everybody wants to be a surgeon, that's false. But if I say everybody can do a balanced job, everybody can do a job which has a degree of disempowering work, because a lot of disempowering work needs to get done, but also has a degree of empowering work, so that that person, by virtue of their circumstances, can participate and participate well, then the answer is yes. Just as a sidebar, sometimes for the hell of it, I say, the logic of your argument is that if Stalin is a better decision maker than everybody else, we should let Stalin make all the decisions. And so the person is horrified, and I say, yeah, but that is the outcome. What you're saying is you think some people are better decision makers, and we should put all the decision making in their hands. Now, I'm contesting the first claim. I don't think some people are, that much better decision makers. And in fact, I think in the 80%, there's plenty of people who are as good at the intellectual tasks of decision making and far better at coming up with good decisions because they're in touch with reality and they're not moved solely by their own interests, which is what happens to those at the top when garbage rises, right? Um, so, the whole thing depends a lot on values. And it depends a lot. Then once you have that, the trick is to think about an institution. Does that institution, interaction with others, further those values that I care about, or destroy them and just make them utterly impossible? And so, if we're serious about the values, and we find that a corporate division of labor and private ownership and markets and central planning and um, uh, remuneration for property and power all crush those values, crush the possibility of self-management, crush the possibility of equity and diversity and so on, and we can conceive of other values in their place, then we're getting somewhere. Then we have put forth a set of institutions that can accomplish the thing that we want to accomplish. It's not a whole vision, it's not everything, right? But it's the heart. It's the key core elements that make the thing possible. And that's what no bosses and the system it describes, participatory economics, attempts to do.
You have probably received criticism for these radical ideas. How would you convince the critics about the system you envision?
It depends who it is, right? If the critic is an owner, if the critic is Bezos, right, I wouldn't bother trying. I just wouldn't waste my time. If the critic is a manager, or a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, I would try. But the key ingredient there is going to be to address some values, to address some prejudices, some beliefs that other people are just incapable or inferior and so on. And so I would emphasize those kinds of examples. If the critic is a worker, is somebody who's in one of those disempowered positions, now the problem might be, there's many possibilities. One possibility is that they've bought it, right? They sort of believe in their inadequacy of themselves and others, and of the superiority of others. And so I'd have to challenge that. If the reason is, however, that they don't really feel that, the schmucky manager doesn't know his ass from his elbow, right? But they feel like you can't win, you can't beat City Hall, then we'd have to talk about, well, okay, what's necessary to actually win this kind of thing. But ultimately, it's the same for everybody. It's can we conceive, make a case for, evaluate, assess, and come away feeling that there's this set of institutions that accomplish production and consumption and allocation in a way consistent with justice, with equity, with people controlling their own lives, with paying attention to ecology, with paying attention to collective effects, and so on and so forth. And that's what the book tries to do. I don't know how, the only other way to answer is very specifically for specific concerns that people have. But you're right, the specific concerns are often a mask, in some sense, for a big overriding concern. And the big overriding concern is typically at the very top, who gives a shit? I don't care about all of you, right? I care about me. And in the 20%, it's not like that. It's more like you're going to destroy society. My ability, my skills, my caring, my concern is what keeps the thing going, right? And you're telling me that I should do a balanced job? I should apply those capacities less? So that's what would have to be overcome. And there's a real strategic issue here, because the extent to which you spend time doing that, trying to talk to the 20%, you can be alienating yourself from the 80%, right? Because you sort of become oblivious to and not paying much attention to their real circumstances and their real needs. You can see that in the United States in many, over the last couple of decades. And the left often does that. So I think what you have to do is address yourself to the 80%, make the case for the vision, and address to yourself to the part of the 20% that is willing to hear, right? And the other part is just going to have to see it happen to believe it. But one thing about that, which is helpful for the 20% now, in May of 1968 in France, when the upsurge happened, and there was this gigantic movement that was just very profound, and people who aren't aware of it should look at it. I mean, the 60s were a big deal. May of 68 in France was the apex of it. It was an incredible phenomenon. And interestingly enough, what you had is, as hope rose and as the seeming potential for real justice, for real equity rose, that 20% in many cases began to switch sides and began to come out on behalf of everyone, not just themselves. Something like it happened in the United States too. You'd get science for the people, lawyers for the people, doctors for the people. It was a little short of balanced job complexes, but it was really motivated in the same ways. So it's possible. It's the 80% that matters most, but the 20% certainly matters. And, if Bezos wants to change sides sincerely, it's okay with me, but I don't expect it.